Hey nerds, Farmer Jesse here. Welcome to Growers Daily, your daily dose of ecological farming insight. It is Wednesday, May 14th, 2025, and today we're going to talk about germination struggles with soil blocks, some farm updates from here at the farm, and that pesky lower and lean term. What gives with that? So let's do it. All right, so happy Wednesday, everyone. I hope you all are having great weeks so far. Here, it hasn't been raining as much as it was, but it has still been raining a little bit basically every day, which provides for bizarre stop-start work days. This was particularly annoying yesterday as I was having fun smashing down some tall winter grasses around our newly planted orchard and had to stop for the rain. I don't really know how well this is going to work, and it honestly doesn't really matter. But the idea of just laying down the grasses in and around those trees and not having to plant it is pretty fun. To do so, I just drove over it with our mower since I was out in the garden mowing anyway and laid it down flat. But again, like I said, my fun was kind of cut short by the rain, which I think was particularly uncool this time because I was having a lot of fun. I was like mid-wee when it happened. Anyway, that area in particular was an old garden plot where I used to put down a lot of hay. So it makes sense that it would be super healthy and any grass that's there would be growing basically above my head and give me this sort of cover crop effect without actual cover crop seed required. Will be very cool to monitor that going forward, in case it needs more smashing. Very satisfying. Okay, so I like to take one day out of every 2 or 3 weeks to just sort of catch you up on what all we have going on around the farm here in Kentucky, Zone 6B, that isn't just my whimsical grass smashing. First, all that rain we got earlier was definitely both rough and it greened everything up really fast. But on the rough side, I didn't have a ton of damage, but it certainly slowed us down and even had a couple tiny gullies created, some of which were in places where there was a compost mulch, which is frustrating to kind of see the mulch wash away. Like I said, though, it also slowed us down, meaning I'm a bit behind on prepping beds. So that's largely what I'm up to this week, pulling tarps off, adding a small amount of compost, raking the beds, and then planting. I've also had to do a bit more cultivating already this season because last year, I kind of got a little bit behind on the living pathways, and well, that's not really an option if you're going to have living pathways. So effectively, I have some grass germinating in the beds where I have not had grass issues in the past, but that's fixable as long as you hit it early with a collinear hoe, or as is my preferred method, a stirrup hoe. The tunnel is coming along nicely. Tomatoes look good and healthy, slowly climbing up their trellises. The carrots are tasty as always at this time of year. Some of my favorite carrots are those sown in January through March, and these were Napoli sown in early January. They're not as tasty as the late summer / fall sown carrots that get that little bit of frost on them in October / November, but they're close. They're a nice close second. Summer carrots, well, they're fine, but definitely not as sweet, not as interesting, more vegetal, which isn't a surprise because carrots are a vegetable. I think of summer carrots more as grilling carrots. Like I mentioned last week, I got our field peppers in, and Hannah spent some of her Mother's Day getting some of the flowers planted, which is the best. I love me some flowers and the butterflies and bugs that come along with them. I've also got a ton of cover crop killing to do over the next few weeks, which I will probably discuss next week. Actually, I will definitely discuss it next week because I will be killing a lot of them next week. The biggest challenge right now is getting work done and getting harvesting done by myself while I wait for Hannah to be through with the school season. She's an art teacher to help out there. That balance of harvesting mixed in with planting and all the other work of a farm creates a constant tension. And I know I've discussed this before, but what we've found to be helpful is dedicating specific days to your harvest so that you know when it is not a harvest day, you better be getting some stuff done in the garden, because on a harvest day, harvesting is all you're going to be doing for the most part. This gets back to that power of constraints on time thing, i.e. how it's important to have a quitting time every day so you make your work time more efficient. And the same idea applies to your harvest days. Have your harvest day be set so you know, 1, I cannot do anything else on those days. Therefore, 2, I better have everything ready so I can actually finish said harvest on harvest day. What the week looks like right now, but will change next week, is Monday send our lists out to our chefs or whatever, plus field work. Tuesday, harvest. Wednesday, field work and deliveries. Thursday, field work. Friday, field work. But next week, like I said, that will change because that will turn into a harvest day as well. It used to be when we were doing the farmers market, that schedule actually started in early April, where we were harvesting every Friday and Tuesday. In the summer, I would often have to tack on a Thursday morning or two as a harvest day, so we weren't, harvesting until dark on Fridays, and then trying to be fresh for market on Saturday. Because as the adage goes, nothing quite sells food better than a burnt out out, tired-looking farmer. It's not. That's not an adage. Nobody says that. The potatoes are looking good, though my first round from the slips, like the potato plants, has suffered. You will remember I'm comparing or hoping to compare yields from sprouts cut from potatoes that I sprouted in trays versus yields from potato cuttings, like normally, like just cutting the potato in half and planting it or whatever, to see if there's any there, i.e. can I get a decent yield using the mature sprouts to save cost on seed? I think what I did wrong this season versus last season is try to plant the slips without roots, and those did not take well. So hopefully the second round will do a little better. The second round that went in this week, obviously it won't make a like-for-like comparison really, because I'm planting them over a month later, but should still give me a good idea of performance, and I'll keep playing with this idea. If nothing else, it'll give me a slew of seed potatoes for next year. Got a warm few days coming up, but definitely looking forward to what appears to be several days in the low 70s, so like 21 to 22 degrees Celsius range. I can get down with that. How are things looking on your farms? Has the season started to pop off for you? Are you getting ready? Are you like deep in it and getting ready to slow down here in the summer like you down there in the South? In the US South, I mean. I'm enjoying seeing all the harvest photos on Instagram, by the way, so that's super cool. Keep those coming. Let us know how things are just moving along for you. Otherwise, we're going to take a quick break, and when we return, we'll troubleshoot a soil block and germination question. BRB. Today's episode of Growers Daily is brought to you by Ring of Fire. What if you could turn your brush problem into black gold? The Ring of Fire biochar kiln is your spring tool for soil transformation, converting woody debris into high-quality biochar in just hours. Biochar will kickstart your compost, retain water and nutrients in your soil, and provide habitat for beneficial microbes. Now $19.95 with flat rate shipping. Their spring sale runs through June. Don't wait to boost your soil and optimize your inputs. Visit ringofire.earth/growers now to learn more. Also, for more information on biochar, check out the No-Till Market Garden podcast interview with Kelpie Wilson, inventor of the Ring of Fire kiln, that we will link in the show notes. All right, back to the show. If you, the listener, are enjoying this podcast, getting even a small amount of value from it, consider supporting our work over at patreon.com/no-till-growers. I will try to get to questions from everywhere that questions come in, but I will always get to your Patreon questions. Now, today's Patreon question comes from Patreon member Madeline Shaw, who writes, quote, "Hi, thank you for all the great content. Glad to be joining the community here." Thanks, Madeline. I tried out a few trays of soil blocks last season, and I'm trying to slowly expand this year as I learn the ropes. It was exciting to find your podcast/channel this winter and see someone doing soil blocks on a commercial scale. One thing I found to be the most different from cell trays or wind strips is in the process of singling, transplanting sprouts from cells or blocks with multiple germination into cells or blocks with no germination. I've been a farm worker/farmer for 15 years, and I haven't yet found a way to ensure that there is germination in every single cell without way overseeding. Last year with the soil blocks I tried, I seeded 4 to 6 seeds per cell and just snipped all extra seedlings to leave one in each cell. But that seems costly seed-wise over time. So this year I seeded brassicas 1 to 3 per block the way I would in a cell or wind strip. So far, through experimentation, I've learned that singling, that's a fun word to say, singling, when the blocks have just been watered and are plenty soaked, helps. You can also squish them back together if they break apart at all. And doing it when the plants are still very small with less roots helps. But I'm definitely running into challenges with the blocks breaking apart, either as I pull out an extra seedling or try to dig down deep into an empty block to fill it with an extra seedling. Would love for you to share any tips, tricks, or however much of your process for doing this with soil blocks you're willing to. I'm guessing you have strategies and workarounds I haven't considered. Side note, if you ever hosted a workshop on soil blocking in person or ideally virtual, I would definitely attend. End quote. Okay, so great and interesting question. Thank you. I feel like I have done videos on soil blocking. I don't know, it's maybe been a while, and have done demos at conferences and such. So I will at least link the videos that I know of in the show notes. Now, based on your question, to me, it sounds like the issue is less an issue of soil blocks and more an issue of your germination conditions and or seed quality. What I mean is that you should be getting at very, very least 90% germination on every tray that you plant, no matter if it is soil blocks or cell trays or wind strips or whatever. And even that is pretty low for vegetables. If done right, there should be no need to thin or do singling, as you refer to it, which is a very fun word to say. Maybe if you were doing paper pot trays where those gaps can cause like a big problem in the field, then I could see it being worth it to occasionally, take multiples out of one block and put them in the other and correct those small gaps. But for the most part, I would not recommend spending time moving plants around in trays. Instead, my advice would be to dial in your germination situation a little bit more. So what that would mean is that you need to be keeping these trays somewhere with high humidity and the right temperatures and the right amount of light, or they will just have to be moved into the light ASAP. So you need to look at where you are currently germinating these trays and ask if it's too cold, too warm, or maybe just too dry or too variable, cold and then hot or whatever. Or maybe you're burying the seeds a little bit too deep with whatever you're using to cover the trays with. Either way, you should be able to just seed a single seed per block, almost regardless of what you're planting, except for things like cilantro, where you may want multiple plants per block or multiple seeds per block. For us on our farm, with the one exception to picking a plant out and moving it to another block, is things like tomatoes and sometimes peppers. But if you're gentle, it should not crush the block, in my experience. If that is happening, that may be a result of too much sand in your soil mix, which means it does not quite have the integrity to keep itself together. Now, I will also say that I don't care too much if I have a few empty blocks in a tray. Maybe I have a higher tolerance for that than others. I start trays assuming 2 to 5% may not germinate, because that's just the nature of seeds. But the soil block themselves should not really determine the germination unless they are just really mucky and offer no aeration element. And even then, the seeds will likely germinate. They just may not thrive. Germination is really just entirely up to the conditions in which they are kept and the quality of the seed used. So old seed or seed kept in warm, wet conditions will not be as effective. Now, I'm probably not telling you anything you don't know, but maybe there was something in there. You've been farming for a long time, so I'd be curious if you address any of those, if it would make any sort of difference. I hope that was helpful. Thanks for the question, and we're going to take a quick break. Then, when we return, lowering and leaning and learning. Be right back. Today's episode is also brought to you by FarmRaise. Still using QuickBooks for your farm's bookkeeping? You're wasting time and losing money. Farm finances can be overwhelming, but they don't have to be. FarmRaise Tracks is the all-in-one tool built just for farmers. Manage expenses, prep for taxes, run payroll, and plan for the future without spreadsheets or stress. Just clear, organized insights to keep your operation thriving. Thousands of farmers trust Tracks to make smart financial decisions all year long. It's time you did too. Use code NOTIL20, that's all caps, no spaces, NOTIL20 for 20% off the life of your membership at farmraise.com. Today's episode is also brought to you by Farmhand. I started a CSA to grow food and build community, not to drown in admin work. Spreadsheets, emails, and pack lists take up too much time. If I could spend less time at my desk and more in the field, that'd be a win. Enter Farmhand. Farmhand automates billing, newsletters, websites, and member support, saving CSA farmers 20 plus hours a week. Focus on farming, not paperwork. See how Farmhand can help. Book a one-on-one demo with founder Ari at farmhand.partners/no-till. That's farmhand.partners/no-till. All right, back to the show. All right, so the term lower and lean is one of that comes up a lot when people are discussing tomato production, almost exclusively as it pertains to tomatoes in a high tunnel, but not always. Other crops can do that too, cucumbers and whatnot that grow tall. If you are in a very dry climate where moisture on the leaves is not as much of an issue, which causes a lot of the blight issues here in very humid and rainy east, then it's possible that setting up a tall trellis and lowering and leaning the tomatoes could be worth it. But again, by and large, the term is associated with the high tunnel production where the tomatoes will grow so tall that they hit the roof and then have nowhere else to go, requiring the grower to lower and then lean them to create more space for them to grow. So to back up, there are a few parts of this process. First is the type of trellis that you're using. If you just tie your tomatoes to a string that is tied to the roof of your tunnel, you cannot really, or at least not easily, lower and then lean them, meaning they are kind of stuck wherever you tied them. So the lower and lean system requires you to have a wire going through the length of the tunnel and a specifically designed mobile trellis system so you can move the tomatoes down that wire as they get taller. The type of trellis hook that you use are important. I've used a few like the roller hooks, the tomahooks, and the clipper system, which I discussed last week and did a video about last year. And any of those can work, though I do prefer the clipper for ergonomic reasons. You can just stand there and you don't need a ladder. And alternatively, I would prefer the tomahooks for simplicity. Now, what the tomahawk and the roller hooks have in common is that they have extra twine on them. So you can let a little twine out, which lowers the plant down, right? Because it's attached to the twine. You're basically like letting out slack, like on a fishing line. Then you can move the trellis hook down the wire, like the length of the tunnel, just a little bit, which effectively leans the plant down. The clipper has a similar effect, but just without the twine, right? It can lower as well. So the result after a few months of lowering the plants, then leaning the plants down the trellis, is that the plant tomatoes themselves stand about the same height in comparison to you the whole time, but the stems are really long and all leaned over top of one another, basically laying on top of one another. Now, one nice innovation is what are called the wicket systems or hook and wicket systems that basically take some of the weight off the tunnel by providing a little wire for the bottom of the plant to sit on. I don't own the wickets. You could probably design your own, but I do think they are a good addition if you're growing tons of tomatoes. So instead of a giant plant, just so this makes sense, all hanging from the tunnel, all the plants are kind of rested on a hook. What that means ultimately is that the fruit stays off the ground and the plant itself stays off the ground, which is important for grafted plants. And it takes stress off of the infrastructure like the tunnel, because those plants can get like monstrously heavy. Monstrously. And that's kind of it. You were taking a tall plant and basically letting it fall closer to the ground and then guiding it down the tunnel instead of letting it just continuously grow into the roof. At the end, you just have to circle it back around, around the end of the bed, going the other direction in kind of like the world's slowest racetrack. And voila, they are lowered and leaned. Anyway, I hope that clarifies or perhaps creates more questions, which is fine too. Either way, let me know. For now, though, let's peace out Wednesday. Don't forget we at No-Till Growers are now officially a 501c3, so donations, well, they are tax deductible and greatly appreciated. You can learn more about that in the show notes. Please make sure to like and subscribe and or follow wherever you're getting this podcast. That's an easy way to help us out. Enormous thank you to all of our show sponsors. And if you'd ever like to sponsor the show, you can reach out to Farmer Michelle at no-tillgrowers.com. Huge shouts to Willie Breeding for the theme music, Mike Hilbert for the production help and editing, and the team at No-Till Growers. Also, shouts to Epidemic Sound for the background music that you can hear. One of these days, Mike's just going to leave that blank and I'm going to look ridiculous, and it will at least make me laugh. Pick up a copy of the Living Soil Handbook or the Seed Farmer at no-tillgrowers.com to support our work. Big thank you to everyone over at patreon.com/no-tillgrowers, where at a certain level, or if you just bump up from one level to another, or you sign up in the month of May, you get a shout out on the show. So big shout outs today to Alicia Arzate. Great. And Helen Stathers. Awesome. Thanks you all. All right, continuing in our story, because yesterday you will remember that our explorers have arrived in Peru via an emergency landing, and because they had no way to communicate with the outside world and the plane was broken, the typical convenient story plot stuff. But to their fascination, they could see kind of just jutting out of jutting in maybe out of a mountainside, kind of a little bit above the trees, a cave. And so a few of them decided to stay behind to work on the plane while the others went to explore. If nothing else, it could be a shelter, but also cave explorers are just going to cave. That's just what they do. So the group wanders off towards the cave, leaving behind their friends there to work on the plane, who were admittedly a little jealous. So the group gets to kind of the mountainside where they are, and they start ascending the rock. And when they reach the cave entrance, a blast of warm air hits their face, which is weird, right? Because caves are usually quite cool, and the air that comes out of them is like, I want a cave just for the summertime. Like I've always wanted a cave, but nice cool air coming out of caves usually. But anyway, they all take note of that as they enter. They would soon discover why the warmth, though, and they would discover it the hard way. Anyway, that is for tomorrow on Cave Calling. I hope that name changes by the end of the week. But anyway, thanks for watching and or listening. We will see you tomorrow. Bye.